listed award is named in honor of our distinguished and revered late companion and World War II veteran, Chief Petty Officer Howard Snell. Admiral Papp will now introduce this year's award recipient.
I want to thank the Naval Order of the United States for continuing to keep the Coast Guard in mind. It's not unexpected given that there are a lot of Coasties that are a member of this group as well. But people sometimes forget or don't recognize the Coast Guard. Actually, it's been kind of gratifying to see that our President has recognized the Coast Guard, particularly after the series of storms that we've experienced this year. So, as I said, it's a great honor and privilege to be here today to announce that the Naval Order of the United States has chosen Master Chief Petty Officer Michael Leavitt, United States Coast Guard retired, to be the recipient of the 2017 Senior Enlisted Distinguished Service Award. Master Chief Leavitt was both a senior enlisted mentor and a sounding board for enlisted administrative actions. He personifies and has always personified the Coast Guard core values of honor, respect, and devotion to duty. But I would say he brought some personal characteristics to the job that even go beyond the Coast Guard core values. And that is, first and foremost, he's genuine. What you see is what you get. He's humble, and most importantly to me, he's selfless. He puts everybody else before himself. Master Chief Leavitt was recognized many times for his extraordinary heroism, which was another thing that sold him for me. He wasn't a guy that sat around in staff assignments or made a career of being a command master chief. He was out there actually doing the business of the Coast Guard, putting himself at risk and saving lives throughout his Coast Guard career. Whether he was leading a swiftwater team through a harrowing rescue of 6 victims trapped by hazardous floodwaters, or rescuing a half-conscious man he physically carried through the surf, which was exceeding 20 feet. And this was on a breakwater as well, you know, rock piles. In fact, there's a very iconic photo of him and one of his crew members with the rescued person between them, basically carrying him on their shoulders to get him back to safety, saving his life. Or saving 3 lives from a turbulent 14-foot surf zone after a fishing vessel capsized and sank. Master Chief Leavitt personified the Coast Guard core value of devotion to duty and its missions of saving life. When one of our rescue helicopters crashed into a surf zone on a California beach during a rescue, he led a recovery team to salvage the aircraft, saving the Coast Guard millions of dollars and preserving the aircraft for the Mishap Investigation Board. Of course, then, typical of Coast Guard ingenuity, we put the aircraft back together, and it's actually continuing to rescue people today, but that was due to Master Chief Leavitt and his team. He's a natural leader, and Master Chief Leavitt's proudest moments came from working side by side with the young men and women that joined the Coast Guard. To quote the Master Chief, "It makes you proud watching these men and women carry on the legacy of the people who came before, and knowing that in some way you are a small part of that," end quote. I could not have selected a better Master Chief Petty Officer of the Coast Guard, and you could not have picked a better recipient for the 2017 Distinguished Service Award. So it's my great pleasure, honor, and I'm humbled to invite Master Chief Leavitt up to the podium to receive his award.
Thank you, everybody. I'd like to thank the Naval Order of the United States for recognizing me for the Enlisted Distinguished Sea Service Award. It's truly a great honor. It's humbling. It's humbling to have my shipmate up here, Admiral Papp, introduce me. It's hard to follow him. I got such admiration for him and his wife, Linda. I'd like to thank Captain Lockwood. Thank you so much for getting Debbie and I over here, all in one piece. I really appreciate that. And I want to thank Hartley Porter also for getting us here. You know, every time I receive an award, and this includes my Coast Guard career, I feel guilty. A little part of me feels guilty because I know I didn't do this by myself. I know this. But I had the honor and privilege to work with some of the finest leaders that you'll ever know. And while Admiral he's up here talking about all these strong words about me, I'm here to tell you You can learn a lot off these two folks out here. These are two great leaders I had the honor to work with. You're not going to find anybody more caring. Him being here with his wife today, just to introduce me, kind of show is a reflection of that. The compassion and hard work, and about every characteristic that you'll ever read about leadership is sitting right here at this table. So Admiral Linda, thank you so much for being here with me today. It's truly a blessing. I also like to thank my wife. Took a chance on me. You may or may not know, most people in this room know how challenging it can be for a dependent to get through here and make it through the service, but we're high school sweethearts. We made it through that. She was very shy. I kind of missed that today. I'll pay for that later. I was more of a rebel, and but here we are. We ended up raising 3 daughters through the Coast Guard. It's been our life. We've got 5 grandchildren, and we are very happily retired. If you can't tell, very happily. So, honey, I just wanted to thank you for being there for all that. And she's still there in retirement. Gives me a little bit more ear sometimes. Well, Admiral Merlin, when you called me, I had no clue what the Naval Order of the Awards. I got to be what the Naval Order of the United States was. I did not have a clue what that was, so I did my research. And I'm grateful that you called me and to let me know what you folks do out there, because I saw it eye-opening, and I like learning new things. But when I opened up one of your latest edition that you sent me, and it said something like this, it said, we want to preserve the history and heritage of our services by telling the stories of those heroes who had served. I didn't get that wrong, did I? No. Okay. That's what I thought. So today I thought maybe I can share 3 stories. You don't mind listening to 3 stories, do you? I listened to Admiral Moore's story this morning. And there's a whole bunch of stories running around here. You know, I don't want to take... This first one I know doesn't deal with the maritime, but it was really special to me. And I think some of you, it'll probably hit you in the heart too. Soon after Admiral Papp selected me as the Master Chief of the Coast Guard, we went up to the White House for Memorial Day breakfast. And it was the first time I was going to get a chance to meet the President of the United States, the Vice President, Service Chief, Secretary of Defense, and all the folks that go to the Memorial Day breakfast. And it was a great day, and it was a great honor. It really was. I believe Admiral remembered that day too. But I really remember there's a World War II veteran who was sitting next to me. He was in a wheelchair, and he was paralyzed from his wounds suffered in the war, World War II. And so I asked him where he'd served. He was in the Army, that's what he told me. He told me that he served under General Patton, 3rd Army. So he shared a story of his comrades, his admiration for Admiral Papp, for General Patton, excuse me. General Patton. He talked about the multiple battles that they endured on their way to the Battle of Bastogne, Belgium. He said they had to fight so they can get to their comrades who were pinned down. And as you know, winning the Battle of Bastogne was pivotal to winning the Battle of the Bulge. He said to me that so many others were killed, most of us were wounded in that battle. And I asked him what was going through his mind. What drove him and others to go on? And he looked at me and he said, "We fought for our country, our way of life, for his family and his friends, and he fought for his comrades." He said he was lucky to be alive, and he would never regret what he had done, because he fought for all the right things. Then I asked him, what was General Patton like? And he said, the greatest leader he had ever known, that he traveled with them side by side, that he talked to his crews, that he was there with them every step of the way. He said he would go to hell and back with that man. Then after he said that to me, he leaned over like some of them old World War II veterans do, and he says, as a matter of fact, I did go to hell and back with that man. The next story I like to talk about a little bit is something we all learn when we go to recruit training. And it's about the heroism of Douglas A. Monroe. He's the Coast Guard's only Medal of Honor recipient. And Deb and I just recently, we attended the 75th anniversary of commemorating Douglas Monroe's heroism and gallantry during the combat action at Point Cruz, Guadalcanal, September 27th, 1942. How many people have heard of that battle in Douglas Monroe? Okay, so if you haven't, I'll go ahead and fill it. I have a quick narrative here. It said over 500 Marines were pinned down by overwhelming enemy gunfire. Despite the high risk of the mission, Douglas Monroe volunteered to lead the rescue efforts using Higgins boats. During that rescue, Douglas Monroe positioned his boat between enemy gunfire and the Higgins boats that were rescuing the Marines. Can you imagine that? On the beachhead, all these boats are picking up those Marines, and what he had done, basically parked his boat right between that enemy gunfire coming this way and those folks that are being rescued. That's what it amounted to. As a result, Douglas Monroe was mortally wounded. Ray Evans, his best friend, held him in his arms where his last words, "Did they all get off?" And so after those ceremonies, the very first one I went to is the 55th ceremony, that anniversary of 55. Now we're at 75. The crowd was 400 to 500 people. It's growing every year. But the most amazing thing about those respects are the members of those Marines, the family members that are alive today, for the action of what one person did, the decision that one person did that day. There are thousands of descendants from them 500 Marines. And the last story I'd like to talk about is more personal to me. I've had so many people watch out for me through my Coast Guard career, but my career would have never got started had it not been for this one. And I think we can all look back at our careers where we're at today, and we probably had these one or two or three. For me, I had hundreds of them help me out because I needed all the help I can get. But this particular one is about a senior chief. See, a few years after I graduated high school, I was trying to find myself. And as you can see, I'm not very complex. There's not much to me. Pretty wide open. So I walk by this telephone pole, and I look, and holy crap, there's this boat stapled up to this telephone pole. And what it was a Coast Guard 40-foot motor lifeboat, and it was busting through this great big surf. Big old huge breakers. And I stared at that photo, and I said, I'm going to go join the Coast Guard. That's exactly what I want to do. So I knew from that day on what I wanted to do. So I went to recruit training, and everybody in there, you asked me what I want to do. I want to be a surfman. I want to drive that boat. They told me what that meant. I want to drive that boat. I want to drive those boats. Well, I don't think anybody heard me. Because assignments came out, and I said, hey, I'm going to be a surfman. I want to drive small boats. I want to bust through the surf and rescue people. And they said, well, they looked at me and said, okay, you're going to the Cutter Botwell. I go, oh, what's that? And it's a 378-foot ship. I know the Navy's probably laughing about that. You got a lot bigger, but 370 foot. I didn't know we had ships in the Coast Guard. But I went off and I sailed for a couple of years on that ship. I really enjoyed being underway. Didn't know what I didn't know until I know. But I really enjoyed being underway. But after a couple of years of serving, I was ready to move on in my career. So in the Coast Guard, we send you have a little bit of trial and error out there for all your seamen. We go to A school. So I went to Bozeman A school. Everybody there knew that I wanted to be a surfman. Everybody. And I worked hard at it. But when the assignments came out, they told me I was going to go to Marine Safety Office, San Francisco. Now, God bless all those folks that like to go out there and prevent and respond to pollution reports and things of that nature. But that job just wasn't for me. I said I wanted to be a surfman. So I had a few things to say about those orders. And they weren't kind. As a matter of fact, there might have been some foul words in there, choice words. But I was beyond upset at that particular point in time. But I'll tell you who was more upset than me. That was Senior Chief, our school chief. And he pretty much told me, can you take kindly to my remarks? Basically, he told me to get my ass to his office. And I'll be honest, I got one of the biggest chewings of my Coast Guard career. And I stood there, and he put the fear in God of me. And then he dismissed me. I said, oh, good God, what are they going to send me to? Having just served up in all Alaska area, this is just by chance, Admiral. Don't take this wrong. I was sure he was going to ship me out to Adak, Alaska. Which is, by the way, Admiral's very first tour. So the next day, I was told to report back to Senior Chief's office, and I'm going, it was probably only 100 yards away from where I had to go, but I bet felt like it was 100 miles away. And I was just wondering what was going to happen. So I walk into the Senior Chief's office, and I'm squared up, and he says, no, he just starts chewing my ass again. And I took another chewing. And then he says to me, I reassigned you to Coast Guard Station Coos Bay, Oregon.
There you go.
That is a surf unit. That is one of the biggest surf units in the Coast Guard. I wish you the best out there. You work hard at it. Now you got your opportunity. You know, I didn't find out 2 years later that Senior Chief actually made phone calls up and down that coast to find me a job. I wouldn't know it from the chewing I got. But he did those things for a reason.
That's great.
You know, in a small part, as I reflect back, Senior Chief was a hero to me. You know, I guarantee had he not selected me, I would have never made it past. Had he not sent me out to Coos Bay, I would have never made it past my first enlistment. I've had the opportunity to be a part of hundreds of rescues. Been in command over 20 years, been in command positions over 20 years of my career. I had a great time driving ships and small boats. Spent 32 years doing it. 4 wonderful years working with Admiral Patton and his wife and serving the men and women of the United States Coast Guard. And I basically did a job that I loved very much. And see, it all started with Senior Chief, had he not made the decision that he had made that day. So these are just a few stories. And I don't want anybody to take this wrong. There's an awful lot of stories in here, and there's an awful lot of history that I see around here as I overhear some of you folks talk. But capturing our military history by those who stood to watch before us is important. In defining the legacy, the culture, and I think more importantly, the future of our maritime services. It's my hope that in some way I did the same for those who stood to watch before me and who stand to watch today. So once again, thank you for all your hard work in regards to keeping our history alive in the maritime world. Did I tell everybody here I wanted to be a surfman? It's pretty short-sighted on my part. Not only was I able to achieve that, but I was able to achieve so much more. Did I tell you I didn't get here by myself? So on behalf of the men and women of the United States Coast Guard who have served and who currently serve, I humbly accept this award. I thank you from the bottom of my heart, and Semper Paratus to everybody. Thank you.